The DevOps Foundation Course, Lesson 10, DevOps and IT Service Management Processes. Welcome to Lesson 10. In this lesson, we're going to look at how DevOps and IT Service Management processes can work together to improve performance. You might already have some of these processes in your organization. We'll focus on general process considerations, change management, release and deployment management, service asset and configuration management, problem management, incident management, and knowledge management. Which of these processes are in place in your organization at the moment? Try and think about any gaps as you study, and what their impact might be. First of all, we'll look at some general process considerations and how DevOps can improve IT service management processes. Every organization will have some element of IT service management processes in place. Many of these will be based on service management best practice, like ITIL or ISO IEC 20000, even if they aren't labeled in that way. DevOps will enable IT service management processes to be more efficient and faster, and this might help to initiate process change and improvement. Service management best practice frameworks like ITIL encourage organizations to adopt and adapt service management best practices to find a way of working that meets the needs of the organization. From a DevOps perspective, we might apply Agile, Lean, and DevOps principles on top of already existing service management processes. We would start with our key processes and work outward from there. The processes we'll be discussing here are the ones that many organizations start with. To create processes that are suitable for DevOps, we need to think about process design. Put simply, process design combines previously collected information with the insight and experience of process stakeholders to determine what to design out of an existing process, what to design into a new process. It's often helpful to use a skilled facilitator to lead these discussions. To create processes that will enable DevOps, we need to be lean to eliminate waste. We also need to prioritize improvements that will support communication, collaboration, and integration. Let's consider this with an exercise. Plan to spend 15 minutes on this exercise. Think about a typical change management process. Steps might include completion of a request for change form and review at a change advisory board meeting before a change is scheduled, built, tested, released, and reviewed. Think of as many areas as possible where the process could be improved to be more efficient and faster, without reducing its effectiveness. One way to improve processes is to maximize the use of models. Models are repeatable ways of carrying out a process or activity and are commonly used in service management processes. Models can make activities faster, more accurate, and more consistent. Models can also be automated where appropriate, helping to maximize flow. Models are commonly used in processes like change, release, test, incident, problem, and request management. A typical model will be a predefined procedure that includes steps to be taken, chronological order and dependencies, roles and responsibilities, timescales and thresholds, escalation procedure. Why not identify an activity that you or your team do and create a model for it? For example, installing a patch, imaging a server, or authorizing a new user. Here's a quote from Tom Peters. "Almost all quality improvement comes via simplification." Think about this based on your own experience. Has your organization ever been guilty of making things more complicated than they need to be? Some organizations are adopting Agile service management, which ensures that their processes reflect Agile values and provide just enough control and structure. Agile service management is an evolution of IT service management, which will adapt Agile practices in IT service management process design, implement service management in small integrated increments, ensure that IT service management processes reflect Agile values, and encourage minimum viable processes to support speed and desired outcomes. We've looked at some general process improvement considerations. In the rest of this lesson, we'll study some individual service management processes and look at some process-specific improvement opportunities. Click on each process to learn more about DevOps practices. Change management is the process used in organizations to record, assess, approve, and schedule changes so as to minimize risk and maximize value to the customer. The table you can see on screen shows some common practices for change management and then some DevOps practices. Change management as a process is very necessary, but many organizations build on their process over time and add more bureaucracy than is needed. This is often in response to a failure. The business decides to tighten up on change management rather than looking more deeply at the root cause after a change implementation has failed. Another process that is very relevant for DevOps is release and deployment management. This process has relevance for how often we deploy and how successfully we deploy. Remember, DevOps aims to increase flow and reduce waste. Not every organization needs to deploy multiple times a day. The key is to deploy successfully at the rate the business needs. Here, you can see some common practices and then DevOps practices for release and deployment management. When we talk about a release, we are referring to one or more changes that are built, tested, and deployed or installed together. It's essential that we talk to the business and understand what they want so we can build an appropriate number of release windows into the schedule. The organization's level of tolerance for change and risk will affect how frequently we can release for each business service. You can see some further examples of common practice and DevOps practices for release and deployment management here. Do you have any issues in your organization related to deployment delays or recurring problems related to deployments? We talked earlier in this course about IT supporting the business and its strategic objectives. To be able to do this, the business needs confidence that IT can release when it wants and release successfully. Another process we need to consider is service asset and configuration management. The process is responsible for tracking all of the items that make up a service and the relationships between them. The process tracks what are known as configuration items using a configuration management database or a configuration management system. Many organizations have asset registers, but they do not track the relationships between assets. From a DevOps perspective, we need to know exactly what will happen over there if we change something over here. We want to protect the business from unintended consequences. On screen, you can see some examples of common practices versus DevOps practices. As you would expect, there is a strong focus on automation and recording the configuration items in the most efficient way possible. This might mean, for example, moving away from tracking servers as hardware and instead creating configuration items for virtual servers. Problem management is a service management term that refers to work that is done to eliminate the root cause of an incident or a number of recurring incidents. For example, if an automated build failed repeatedly and required manual intervention, problem management would be the process that investigated the root cause and corrected the build. Problem management also has a proactive role, trying to prevent problems from occurring. Problem management should take place throughout the service lifecycle. It's not just restricted to services that are in live operation. You can see some examples of problem management common practices and DevOps practices here. Many development teams already have brainstorming sessions and work on problems in a proactive way. They just don't refer to it as problem management. From a DevOps perspective, identifying and correcting problems early in the product lifecycle will reduce waste and prevent them from moving downstream. Incident management is the process that restores service as quickly as possible when there is a fault. You can see some examples of incident management common practices here. Do you see any of these in your organization? DevOps practices will focus on quality at the source and make sure there are clear roles, responsibilities, and accountabilities for incident management. You can see some further incident management practices here. Many organizations struggle to manage complex incidents because no team takes responsibility. The network team might say it's not a network incident, the server team says it's not the servers, and so on. By focusing on learning opportunities and holding blameless postmortems in a high-trust DevOps culture, this sort of situation can be avoided. Here, you can see the common practices and DevOps practices for knowledge management. DevOps will adopt some of the characteristics of knowledge-centered support, or KCS. This integrates the creation and maintenance of knowledge into the problem-solving process, and then evolves content based on demand and usage. Knowledge is captured more quickly and is only refined, edited, and formally published if it's being used. The goal is to get the right information to the right audience at the right time, not after a long publishing process. We're going to complete this lesson with an exercise. Plan to spend 20 minutes on this exercise and try and think about your own organizational processes. What other service management processes can you think of that might support or integrate with DevOps? Which of their practices might need to be refined to help them work more effectively with DevOps? When you're ready to move on, click the Next button to reach the end of lesson quiz. You've completed Lesson 10, where we've looked at how DevOps works with ITSM processes. We've studied general process considerations, change management, release and deployment management, service asset and configuration management, problem management, incident management, and knowledge management. Have you identified anything you want to change in your organization? In the next lesson, we'll look at some automation considerations for DevOps.